afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Having witnessed the productive and engaging technical sessions at the 37th PGIA Annual Congress, we now invite you all to join the panel discussion which will commence shortly. To moderate this discussion, I am honored to invite Professor Buddhimarambe, eminent scholar and senior professor, the Department of Crop Science, Faculty of Agriculture, University of Peradeniya. Over to you, sir.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's good to be here. And thank you very much for all of you for joining us today in this afternoon to get engaged in a productive session where you as audience will also be engaging in the latter part. To start on with, the theme today, the panel discussion, is food systems transformation. We all know about food systems, isn't it? We have been talking about food security every time. So before I invite the three panelists on stage, let me tell you how we are going to go ahead with this overall panel discussion. We had a great day up to now, and I'm sure we are going to have to make it greater in the next few hours to make sure the PGIA Congress, 37th Annual Congress, will be a memorable one as well. The objectives, as I was told by the PGIA when they had started inviting me, the coordinator as well as others who are organizing this event, it's threefold. It's interesting. Our job today is to understand and recognize how innovations would contribute to strengthening and not transform food systems in Sri Lanka. Starting from input supply until the time the waste generated out of our plate is managed, that's a change of food system. That's the chain that we are talking about nowadays. So each nodal point in this food system will contribute heavily to achieving food security. Though it's a conceptual framework, but still it will help us and it will contribute significantly to achieve this cherished goal. That's what we are going to discuss today. The second objective of the meeting or the discussion is to understand what community actions would contribute or at what level they would contribute significantly in achieving food security. No matter talking about food security, no matter talking about food systems, unless there is community participation that we all have understood from various ways. And this is something that we are going to try out today, posing questions to the panelists and requesting questions from you to get more details about it. And then finally, to propose policy interventions that are urgently needed to strengthen and transform food systems in Sri Lanka. We are at crossroads, if you look at it, colleagues. I mean, in terms of food security and food system, people are hitting in all angles, all corners, trying to achieve or trying to reach certain goals. But we are not up to that particular point, and let's try to see how best we can reorganize, how best we can advise the government of Sri Lanka, Postgraduate Institute of Agriculture being a great academic institution, how this institution can get these policy perspectives into action with the help of the government of Sri Lanka, and that's why we are here. So the mode of conduct with respect to this panel discussion, there'll be 2 rounds of questions, 3 panelists whom I'll be inviting in a while. Each panelist will respond to 2 questions in 2 rounds, 1 question per round, and in each round, each panelist will be given 4 to 5 minutes maximum to respond to a question, a pre-planned question that will be forwarded to them. After the first 2 rounds, I will then open it up for you, the audience, to ask questions. But please keep in mind, we are not allowing anyone to ask questions verbally, but we want written questions written. And can I see hands raised of those colleagues in the audience who will be carrying this piece of paper? As well as pens, organizers, I'm sure you have planted few. People who will be carrying the piece of paper, pens. Okay, only they are missing in the audience except for others. Let's see how it goes. But no questions will be allowed to ask verbally. Please make sure you forward the questions in the written form so that I will make sure while the session goes on that there will be members here in the audience so that they can carry your messages to me so that I will take the liberty and to asking those questions from the panelists. So without much ado, let me invite the three-member panel on stage. The first member whom I'm inviting will be the Senior Research Fellow in the Development Strategies and Governance Division at the International Food Policy Research Institute, Dr. Derek Heddy. Please give a round of applause, colleagues. Thanks, Derek. Thank you very much for responding to us positively to our invitation. The second panelist is the Director General and Chief Executive Officer of the Industrial Technology Institute, Ilmi Hewajulige. Ilmi is a proud product of Faculty of Agriculture, University of Peradeniya as well. Thank you, Ilmi, once again. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation, for being with us here today. The third, the last but not least, the Group Chief Executive Officer of the Research and Innovation Arm, LOLC Holdings PLC, Manju Gunawardana. Thank you, Manju, once again. And we have a star-studded panel, I must tell you, here today to talk about food systems, especially the transformations, just not about food systems, about transformation. That's the key and the important aspect as well. So let me start posing questions to you all, and it's a pleasure to pose questions to you all. I mean, usually when I go sit in a panel, people ask questions from me, and now I'm going to enjoy life by asking questions from you, right? And the audience, remember, I'm not a person responsible for responding to any questions, but I'm responsible to posing your questions to them as well. So I'll take that liberty. So, Derek, you are the first batsman in this panel discussion today. We know that you have very wide experience with respect to food systems in the national level in Sri Lanka, Southeast Asia, Asia, and at global scale as well. To start on with, can you educate us or can you let us know briefly about the importance of food system transformation? Not about food system. We'd like to know about food system transformation. Over to you, Derek.
Sure. Thank you very much, and thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be back at Peradeniya. So I think it's a great question. You know, I think when I started doing kind of development economics, agricultural economics 20, 25 years ago, we actually I don't think we use the term food system transformation, right? It's a fairly new term, maybe 15 years old. And when I started working on agriculture, my main interest was, why don't countries who have 80% of the workforce working in agriculture, why don't they invest in agriculture, right? So there's this huge sector and they kind of neglect it. And a lot of the work that IFPRI was doing, both at that time, like early 2000s, but really going back to the 1970s, John Mellor and Steve Hagblade and others, they were trying to persuade governments and donors, you invest in agriculture because most of the world's poor are farmers, and if you want to lift them out of poverty, you need to increase their productivity, basically, right? They don't have much land, so you've got to increase their yields. So that's not food systems transformation, that's farming transformation, right? And that seemed a good idea. But now what we're working on, even from a poverty perspective, is saying, well, hang on, yeah, maybe, I don't know, 20% of Sri Lanka's workforce works in farming. But what percentage of Sri Lanka's workforce works in the agri-food system? I don't have that answer.
That's an important question.
We should ask. But in many countries where IFPRI's done work now, we tend to find that that ratio can even double. I mean, you just think about Sri Lanka, how many food retailers, fruits and vegetables, butchers, processors, people processing food, all the employees in Keels and Cargills, all the transport, it is huge. So food system transformation, especially moving beyond the farm, is about creating jobs and good jobs and higher paying jobs, or creating good businesses off the farm as well. So that's one, I think. The second one, and actually it's huge, is that globally, you know, there's health scientists do the global burden of disease every year. And the global burden of disease tells you what people are dying from all around the world, but also what's affecting their health, right? What are they losing kind of quality of life from? And the number one risk factor in the global burden of disease is poor quality diets. So poor quality diets, and it might be in Sri Lanka even 1 or 2. And why is that? So we have both undernutrition. We know that micronutrients, vitamin A deficiencies, vitamin D deficiencies, iron deficiencies, those are hugely costly, especially for young children. But then what's coming up is cholesterol that comes from our food. Cholesterol, heart disease, obesity, heart disease, sugar, diabetes, red meat nitrates cause cancer, salt cause blood pressure problems. And then there's all these ingredients in processed foods. We don't even know what they do, but not good, right? We should be eating foods from nature. So the second reason is really to improve diets. And now one of the big problems is when you look at healthy and unhealthy foods, many healthy foods are highly perishable, right? Your fresh fruits, your vegetables, fresh milk, eggs. So you need value chains for those foods to work very well. Otherwise there's a mess, right? You've got problems with quality, you've got problems with seasonality and prices. Sri Lanka still has that. And the main problem is that healthy foods, perishable healthy foods, are just much more expensive than unhealthy foods. So you can go home today or go to a supermarket, see how much it costs to buy a packet of instant noodles, and then compare it to some fruits and vegetables. And then the third reason related to that is food safety, right? So food safety also affects those perishable healthy foods, and that's a big one. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much, Derek. I think you posed a very important question. We have Director PGIA who have just vanished somewhere. We have Dean Agriculture in the audience for us to answer about how many people actually, what is the percentage of population in the agri-food system, employed in the agri-food system. I think it's a difficult question to answer at this particular time, but something for us to think about it. Data must be hidden, or we have to dig it out from somewhere. Exactly. Bright survey. I mean, you can talk about it in a while in the next segment when I ask questions from you. Well, let me move on to Ilmi. Ilmi, I mean, you are an experienced campaigner when it comes to food technology, being in the Industrial Technology Institute and so on, and your work with the community. Can you please explain, for example, all of us in the audience, the need to have community participation in achieving food security as well as strengthening the food systems as well? Over to you, Ilmi.
Okay. First of all, I would like to thank for the organizers for inviting me for this panel discussion. Yes, community participation is very much important. Before I come to that, I think you have clearly mentioned that what is food system and what is food system transformation. Even Derek explained about that. So in food system, what we explained that the entire chain, entire activities related to actors, processors, plus resources. So actors are the stakeholders of the whole food system. So without stakeholders, actually, we cannot have transformation and also healthy and environmental friendly food system. And also the most important part is the sustainable food system. So if we take these actors, actually, why we are having this food system, we want to empower the people, living standard. We want to increase the living standard of people. Then we wanted to have healthy diets, as he already mentioned, and sustainability. So to do that, we have to have the community participation. If I take from the beginning, actually, we have to educate our community about the healthy diets, as he mentioned. So we can start from the school level. So that is our first community. So school level children, we have to start the education about food system and also how it is behavior and what are the changes we are expecting to have a healthy food system. So we can include some of the aspects in their curriculum, and then these children will learn what are the transformations we are planning and what are the activities they have to think, and then those information will definitely go to their parents. So from these children, then definitely these parents will learn. So that community participation is very much important. That is kind of knowledge sharing starting from school children. Then university, definitely we have to have all these things in the university curriculum, not only as a theory part, as practical aspects. So then university students will give this message to maybe when they engage in other industries. So then we can go to our farmer communities, especially youth empowerment, even from the university, we start from youth empowerment. So then these youth groups can definitely work in these food systems and do the transformation. So when we take, there are different transformation activities. If I talk about the healthy diet, so that is very much important. So as you mentioned at the beginning, to reduce losses, if we can reduce the losses through the food system, and finally if we can give healthy diets to our communities, then that is the most important thing we have to do in this food system. So this, all these communities, then the women empowerment is another important task in this community participation. There are a lot of women groups, if we take, especially farmer communities, there are women farmer groups. So those farmer groups actually, they do not only the food system related activities, even the latter part, the consumption and consumption plus how to do the waste management. So therefore, we have different communities within the food system. So these community participation in all these activities are very much important in order to do a transformation. What we can see, the good level of transformation, definitely all this community participation is very much important.
Thank you very much, Ilmi, bringing in a few examples as well. Well, colleagues, we will see the healthy diet is emerging as a key word, right? When we listen to Derek and Ilmi. I'm moving on to Manju. I mean, it's a long-term collaboration that we have had in several fields when we talk about Manju's collaboration with Faculty of Agriculture. Manju, we all know innovations will lead the pathway in terms of development. And when you look at food system, it's not an exception as well. So with your experience, can you just put forward your thoughts to let us know that how innovations, being an innovator, you yourself, how innovations can contribute to this food system's transformation for the betterment, of course. Over to you.
Thank you very much, PGIA in the first place, to invite me here. To answer this question, I start with a simple innovation we have done. It's a simple theory called Q squared dot. QQDOT, which is quality, quantity, delivery on time, which is extremely important to the entire food chain. Quality and quantity is the most two important areas. How to elevate quality in food, how to improve the quantity at the lowest possible cost of production. You need interventions for that. You need interventions for quality improvements as well as quantity improvement. Once you produce this, in the last portion, you need delivery on time. The post-harvest part comes into that. So based on this Q squared dot, we started working on real transformative research, how to improve. Innovation is important to elevate your entire system from one level to another level. That is the key part. In my explanation, that is how I explain innovation. So how we cut and chop, how we apply whatever the knowledge gathered newly in order to resolve old problems. That is a key part of it. If I take a simple example, I would like to take this example. This is something to do with University of Peradeniya, Faculty of Agriculture, this rice fortification project. Everyone knows about it. It's a super example. One final year research student project have gone up to a level, we earned 2 US patents and we have 3 manufacturing facilities around the world now. So but the problem was the nutrition value of rice and how can we use rice as a carrier to take different nutrients onto your plate. So we developed a new technique. So with that technique, you can impregnate any target molecule or any molecule practically into the rice kernel, so rice can be delivered. People consume rice, then basically it's a carrier. Rice being a staple food in most part of the world, so it's a super carrier. It became something very important in the entire Q squared dot. Quality of food you consume, adequate quantity, and delivery on time and to the target point. So if we can break this into that, any food-related research, food-related innovation into quality, quantity, and delivery on time, we simply resolve the first problem, the entire cross-section of what we really need. Number two, when we consider this entire transformation into a process, you have inputs, you have a process, then you have output. So if you optimize your inputs with new developments, with new methodologies, you obviously cut down the cost of inputs. Then you have a process, you have process improvements, then you cut down your energy to manpower to time allocated for that particular process to everything, so you reduce the cost. Then your output. If you handle your output properly, there is the delivery on time to the correct place, you cut down the cost and you make sure your produce is available. Then you basically resolve a major part of the problem which we are facing right now. So that is the stepping stone into innovation into the food chain.
Thank you very much, Manju. I think let's talk about these type of things more in the second round as well. When I'm thinking of asking more specifics about this. Colleagues, that ends the first round, the general overview about the food system transformation. While that was going on, I saw a few papers being circulated around. I don't see those ladies who circulated those papers to you all. Are there any in the hall right now? They just circulated and vanished? No? Oh, there she is. So if you have any questions, please write it down and make sure you pass that piece of paper to her so that I'll be receiving the questions soon, so that to go ahead with the audience question in the round 3. If not, I'll be posing more questions for you, right? We have to make use of the time in the maximum possible way. So in round 2, I'm going to change the order of asking questions as well. Ilmi, I would like to go ahead with you first. In terms of examples, when you try to explain the community engagement, you brought in few, but taking school children in general, their parents, linking up to other, universities, and so on. But I'm sure you will have more specifics with your own experience to give us more impetus for us to look at those things in a more pragmatic manner and to see how certain examples can be scaled up and then practiced, so that to make sure this food system transformation take place effectively. Over to you.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, I can give some examples, especially with our ministry. We have Vidata, Women Empowerment Programs to Vidata. So my institution, we do a lot of technology development, but we don't have proper extension system. So we use Vidata as our extension system to take whatever the technologies we develop to the village level. So they are actually in all the divisions where they have Vidata officers, and they do a lot of women empowerment programs and also knowledge sharing sessions for women. So these, most of these women are involved in value-added product development, especially if I take food technology. So they do a lot of entrepreneurship development, like they have their own entrepreneurs, and also some industry level. Now they have gone up to the exporter level. So they started as a small entity, but now they have gone to exporter level. So that is, it's a kind of transformation. So that is very good example. So in all over the country, there are a lot of Vidata entrepreneurs. And other than that, there are a lot of, in other ministries also, they have that type of. Then I can give another example. In Bandaravela, there's a farmer association for potato growers. So actually, when they have all the facilities to select the sorting and grading of potato, one time they have lot of maybe big potatoes, but they don't know how to utilize these big potatoes because they cannot sell these potatoes in the market. So what they wanted to have, it's kind of potato French fry like commodity. So then we were able to give the technology. Now that there's a farmer community, so these farmers supply the potato to that particular organization, and that organization do fresh potato distribution, then also process protection. So then finally it's kind of everything is used. So it's a good example. And I can give the last example now. I think you are from IFRI. Now we have a project called Better Diet and Nutrition. So earlier it was Fresh Project. So in that project we are going to introduce some model pack houses to reduce post-harvest losses, especially in Nuwara and Bandaravela area. So the farmer communities will come to one place, and then they have to utilize the common pack house facility to pack their produce. Then finally they can distribute these things either to supermarket or maybe export market, even local market level. So those are some examples. There are many more, but
Sure.
yeah,
I mean, that's
the
great. I
time
mean,
being,
just to add on to the question, Ilmi, when I listened to the 3 examples that you gave, are there effort to scale up?
yes,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's true, others can pick it up
Yes.
and pick on those things, but
Yeah.
then
Those
at what level
Yeah,
ITI is moving into this?
Yeah, ITI, the initial level, we have assisted them by giving the technology. Then later on, for example, now when they started it as a startup company, then later on they scale up large industry. They have gone to that level, some of these people. So then we have given all the technology plus machinery specification, how to set up a factory, and also value chain development. So other than without that value chain development, they are not sustainable.
Yeah.
So that's why you have to have all these things together to have a sustainable
Sure.
community-based endeavor.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ilmi. Manju, innovations, you came up with an example from your own experiences. I'm sure you have much more to tell us about how the innovations have significantly contributed in improving productivity, improving value chains, and so on, to make sure this food system transformation take place effectively. Would you mind telling us a little bit more?
Yeah, I'll take 2 major examples. One is paddy, other one is tea. So we have been working with these 2 areas. The major problem we saw is the output. Basically, the outputs versus input, the user optimization and the utilization. So we have developed 2 major fertilizer types. Every one of you all know we are in a severe problem with our soils. So me coming from a different background, I'm a nanotechnologist, so we developed some new materials to push your plant nutrients through a different pathway to target endpoints. To use soil less and to get new pathways, the foliar pathway especially, to basically lock your target molecule into graphene sort of a 2D material with higher mobility and to deliver into target places in the plant. So we have very good results after doing this particular research area for a couple of years. So now we are in a position to reduce the soil-borne fertilization especially in tea we have cut down it by 35 to 40% by applying foliar fertilizer more, including fertilizer as well as plant growth regulators. Together, it is a concoction effect, new delivery technique, new targeted delivery technique, and the resultant is basically additional 40 to 45% of additional green leaf in tea, plus 15 to 20% additional total polyphenols in tea, which is the most important part of the entire tea game. So it is happening now. We are now using it in Sri Lanka as well as in some African countries which we grow tea. There is a tea part of it. The same scenario applied into paddy. We started using precision agriculture techniques, especially when it comes to multispectral imagery and multispectral imagery related data into paddy to measure the growth potential as well as the growth stage and the efficacy of growth at that particular point. Then we were in a position to come up with a mathematical model, which is a new model, where to quantify the exact amount of different types of molecules or different types of nutrients at that particular point in the growth. So then we were in a position to understand which nutrient, which quantity is needed at that particular point. So with that optimization, we were in a position to double up the target yield. We are now in the range of 8.5 to 9, in some areas 10 plus tons per hectare of paddy with general inputs, but the way we supply these nutrients are completely different. Those are the innovative thought processes which we used. So I mean, tea and paddy as very important to systems in the country. So we are now in a position to at least improve the productivity, the output by 40 to 50%.
Thank you very much, Manju. I mean, you brought in few very important aspects to this scenario, bringing in innovations in the recent past. I mean, you're talking about productivity improvement, right, based on the innovations that we have made overall. Let's see how things work. We are hopeful. The government of Sri Lanka, all governments in the past, present, and I'm sure in the future, we'll be looking at food system transformation in different angles, different aspects based on their own policy perspectives. Yes, go ahead.
Just to add a small thing. Now, when it comes to the maximum efficacy levels of that particular something, we are in 30 to 35% efficacy currently right now. So as innovators, we have another 65% to go. So if you, as researchers, as innovators, we have a huge playground for us to apply our technologies, apply our knowledge to fulfill that gap. We are definitely in 30-35% of anything as output. So, I mean, researcher or innovators' target should be to reach this empty area of 65% to reach the maximum.
Thank you very much, Manju. Derek, I mean, you listen to a government-owned entity which works like private sector, that's ITI, and of course the private sector perspectives on these innovations, community participation, and so on. But while saying so, policy interventions play a very important role, right, when you talk of food transformation, food system transformation. IFPRI is a entity that looks at the policy perspectives always. So if at all the government of Sri Lanka to take an initiative in this regard, what are the top 3 policy priorities or intervention that you think, based on experiences, that we should embark on?
That's an impossible question. Because I'm not sure.
See, I told him, I have the liberty in asking questions this time.
Well, I'm going to cheat because my father was a political scientist, and he said, you know, the best politicians, if they get a question they don't like, they say, that's a great question, but here's a better question. So it's a very good question, but I'm going to talk not about policies, I think institutions. Yeah. Right. So you mentioned, yeah, we've got private sector here, we've got a government entity that is like, yeah, it tries to act or create R&D like a private sector. And this is a huge challenge. I mentioned before, like, you know, working in Africa, but, you know, Asian countries where there's this massive underinvestment in agriculture. And when I was first doing work at IFPRI on this sort of political economy show, I was asking people like, yeah, I'm in Uganda, and, you know, you guys have a huge sector. Why don't you spend any money on agriculture? And I heard this line all the time. And these are people who'd been brainwashed by the World Bank and IMF for many years. They would say, agriculture is a private sector activity. So the markets, you know, they do their thing, the farmers do their thing, we just have to build some roads, everything will be fine. And I heard that like quite a lot. And I was like quite struck by that. On the other hand, when you look at the agricultural powerhouses in the world, did governments play any role? Damn straight. You look at America. America loves free markets, whatever, but how much money has American government poured into agriculture? How much protection do they still give America? I mean, there are many people here who visited or studied at American land-grant universities. It's huge. I mean, Trump is underinvesting in that now, but it's huge. China, one of the biggest, the biggest investor in the world now, largely through public R&D. Indian government has played a huge role in its agricultural development. So these are huge. And then I would add one more. Like, I'm curious, this is actually a question for the room. Who do you think is which country is the most outstanding agricultural success story of the last 20 or 30 years? Does anybody want to call out? I know Sri Lankans are very shy in public, so not. Professor Jivaka, come on, give me a go. Put you on the spot. Have a guess.
Yes, Jivaka, you're on the spot
now. It's an
now.
opinion. She's not part of the panel. I mean, I would say... Sorry, somebody else?
It's likewise saying...
Dilani?
It's likewise saying that's
Vietnam.
a great question. See?
No, she got it.
She got it.
Vietnam. You name a commodity that Vietnam produces, and it does fantastic. You pick something. Mangoes, rice, they're usually the biggest rice exporter in the world. Any type of fruit. Dairy. How is Vietnam so good at dairy? They are exporting dairy. Now, it's a cheat, because they're importing dairy powder from New Zealand, they're processing it and re-exporting it. So we're talking about the food system, it's not just the farmers. They're very good at manufacturing and advertising as well. So there's something in a country like Vietnam that they got institutionally right. And I'm not going to tell you all the secrets, I don't know the secrets, but one is engagement between the public sector, the private sector, R&D, the universities, they have very good think tanks. Another one is problem solving, right? If you don't have this dialogue between institutions, how can you problem solve? And one thing we know about agriculture, problems come up all the time. If you look at the last 4 years in Sri Lanka.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Derek. That's a nice way of looking
thank you,
at it.
Dilani. Thank you.
Yeah. Dilani, you scored a lot, I must tell you. Right? Yeah. Well, that ends the 2 rounds of questions, colleagues. I didn't expect this number of questions coming from the audience also. Quite a number. I mean, if I try to forward all these questions to you, we might even exceed. And I've exceeded the time period allocated, and I don't think our coordinator would like it, even to hear that it's going to happen. Now, let me pose the first question to you. And I picked this question because by the handwriting, I know who it is who has written this question. But anyway, I'm not trying to talk about the preamble. Every question has a preamble in this writing. So without wasting much time, let me put forward the question directly to you, Derek. The question is, what are the binding constraints that inhibits the food system transformation in Sri Lanka? As far as you think.
I think I already answered that in a way. I think it's institutions, right?
So institutions is the most important part.
So one thing that struck me when I moved to Sri Lanka, and this is a weird fact, but the first week I was in Sri Lanka was the week of the fertilizer ban. And I read it in the newspaper and I thought, that must be fake news. No Asian leader bans fertilizers. That's like, don't mess with rice, right? But then that's an obvious example. But if you look back at Sri Lankan policy making, how much has it been informed by evidence ever? Like, I don't know, your experience, like, so in the last 5, 10 years, 20 years, how hard is it to engage some, not all government institutions, but some government institutions with evidence? That's very, very difficult. So I think that alone is like a sort of overarching meta constraint, right? If you can't get science-based decision-making in the government, you've got a problem because agriculture needs science.
Yeah, exactly. That's where the problem is, the evidence-based things. I mean, in most of the cases, we put heart before the brains. That's a killing factor, right, in most of the cases in decision-making. Something related, Derek, once again, in the same piece of paper that I got. We are now in the budget debate, 2026 budget being presented, second reading has been passed. Now the debate is going on when the third reading will take place early next month for approval. Looking at the food system, what do you think the national budgetary priorities should be? Mind you, the agriculture will be taken into debate on 27 November.
Yeah. So I think that the neat side is like just agriculture. I think one thing we didn't talk about earlier, once you start talking about the agri-food system, you're missing out on a lot of the middlemen, right? So Tom Reardon at Michigan talks about the missing middle, right? So yeah, we might have the big retailers and the supermarkets get attention and then the farmers get attention, but all the traders and wholesalers, the processors, and then like some of the things like that Dilani works on, food environments. Who's in charge of food environments in Sri Lanka? You know, right?
Okay, so, don't look at me, look at the audience.
Well, that's a big problem, right? It could be municipal governments, it could be rural governments and so on. So actually, when you start talking about the agri-food system, it's actually a multi-sectoral problem. It's not an agricultural ministry problem. And that, I think, is challenging and something that needs to even be recognized at the government level, just as we recognize climate change is a multi-sectoral problem. Nutrition is a multi-sectoral problem. The agri-food system is a multi-sectoral problem. That's also another institutional change.
Sure. All boils down to institutional aspects finally, right? When you, I mean, the light system, I do not know whether they are testing the light system on us. Whether they are testing the light system on us, or it's a reflectance from us.
I think it's a sign you're talking too much.
Right. Okay, right. Ilmi, this question, although the person who asked this question has not directed to any member, but I think I would like to pose it to you. In this whole food system transformation, you are interested in community engagement. That's why I pose more questions on that particular aspect. What is the position, or in other words, provision granted to get this local and indigenous knowledge into action in this food system transformation?
Actually, in Sri Lanka, there are a lot of indigenous knowledge. If we go back to our ancient times, so we have a lot of, especially in agriculture, plus even preservation, food preservation. There are a lot of indigenous knowledge, but in some times we have neglected those things. So I think we have to go back and utilize some of the knowledge, and we have to give some scientific face to this indigenous knowledge. Okay, so that is very much important. So you have to think what are the scientific background in this indigenous knowledge. Sometimes there may be some, in Sinhala it says that Kemkrama. So we have to think whether there's any scientific background on these. So then if it is, if there's a scientific background, then definitely we can take them to our food system transformation activities. So I think it's really important because in the FAO report also, they said that we have to go back to our traditional food patterns, food diets. So I think that also really important. In other countries, if we take China, Japan, Korea, even though they have, they develop industrially, but they retain their traditional food patterns with them. So I think for Sri Lanka also, we have to think about that. We always try to transform everything, but our traditional food pattern, definitely, it is very much healthy diets we had before, plus exercise also, our ancient time, indigenous people, they have used. So I think with this transformation, we have to take these things, whatever the plus points, whatever the good things into our system.
Ilmi, I mean, to continue on it, now a lot of people talk about indigenous knowledge and practices. Yes, we are proud of it, but what are the efforts being made to validate these things scientifically? I'm not trying to say everything should have numbers fit into it, but just your opinion, what efforts have been made?
Yeah, actually, if we take the herbal technology areas, the herbal products used by indigenous people as a medicine, so those things most scientists, they have validated. For example, this Kottamalli and Munguru, whatever the things we use for our in our ancient time. So those things are scientifically validated. And also some herbal extracts, scientifically validated. And even some traditional foods, yes, there are some scientific evidences that these things are very much important to your diet. They just say this is good for this, this particular disease, but now scientists have validated, then they said that this is, for example, if we take traditional rice. So in Sri Lanka, we had a lot of traditional rice varieties grown in Sri Lanka, but after some times we couldn't see those varieties. Now again, those varieties have come to the market. So when we analyzed those varieties, we found, yes, there are a lot of properties like anti-diabetic properties. So scientists can validate those things, that there are some validated reports as well.
Okay, work has been done and more work has to be done as
Yes,
well in this particular.
yes.
So Manju, the same question, I mean, from the private sector, I mean, you are quite proud and keen to present the findings that you had, and you're talking about paddy and the tea sector. I'm posing the same question that I posed to Ilmi regarding validation with the government institution. Private sector invests, I do understand a lot. And what are the efforts that you have made with respect to paddy and tea, bringing in the last example that you brought in terms of productivity, to validate your results in collaboration with the government entities?
So actually it's a must for us to do proper validation. So as a first step, we have now discussed and given samples to RRDI. They are doing some observational trials this year with our new paddy fertilizer and the paddy input system. And now we are discussing with TRI to validate the foliar applications as well as the ground fertilizer, because we really want to, in this case, what we wanted to do as a private organization is basically to do a collaboration with RRDI as well as TRI, because two things. One is, when it comes to these kind of research programs, you need funds. So funds can come from private sector side faster. So acquired knowledge from decades are not with us. It's with the respective research entity, research institute. So once we amalgamate those two together, the output will be much faster. So we are doing it in that way. Other than that, when it comes to tea specifically, we grow large extents of tea. So we have converted a couple of our estates according to the different agroecological zones in the country as our small research centers for us to do some observational and quick trials, experiments, not research but experiments. So based on these experimental results, we are working with TRI very closely now, and RRDI, as you know, and we have been working with RRDI from a couple of years. So this is that part. And to add something onto what you asked, Professor Marambe now, I am a firm believer of open innovation. Some innovation or some activities we can't just tell someone for him to do it by themselves, but some we can do. Very good example when it comes to tea especially, we have realized that cytokinin can do something very positive to tea. So now we are promoting something integrated. We give seeds of moringa to small scale farmers. They grow moringa. Moringa leaf contains considerable amount of cytokinins and biostimulants. What we basically tell them is to get some moringa leaf, chop it, get the sap, dilute it 1:30, put a bottle of beer, stout is preferred, and spray. You definitely get higher bud break, and you get... So people complain me, I mean, Manju, once you go and tell these things, you might lose your market. So, but this open innovation is going to work in that way. If you can remember at one point 10, 12 years ago, when Ceylon Brewery reduced the price of beer, farmers almost all the Norelia farmers started buying large quantities of beer and started spraying into potato. So likewise, this knowledge, just the same question you asked from Dr. Ilmi, the knowledge is everywhere. So how to apply this knowledge and how to integrate whatever the available knowledge in order to resolve their burning problem is open innovation, and we support that. So this tea scenario is one minute for another very important thing. Now trichondronol is another very prominent molecule which can improve plant growth, and trichondronol is there on mature tea leaves. So if you get trichondronol, you can simply extract reasonable amount of trichondronol from tea leaf itself. Once you spray it, you get higher bud break, which is proven, not only here. Especially in Kenya, they do it with alfalfa leaves. Alfalfa leaves is having very high quantity of tricontrol, but we have moderate amount of tricontrol on tea leaves. So those kind of small things can take, those kind of small activities can take farmers into another level.
Thank you very much, Manju, for a detailed explanation given. The next question, again, I can read the handwriting well, who wrote this, but person does not matter here, right? The question is on quality and quantity. Now, attention usually given will not be given on quality of material foods in the overall food system when the quantities are not adequately available. That usually happens. Quantity matters a lot in a country like ours. So what could be the recommendations from your side to overcome such a situation? Remember, quality matters. You brought up the issue, right? But when the quantities are not available, quality will take a backseat. Who would like to take that question? It's for anyone in the panel. Okay,
Dr. Ilmi, you take it. I have a different perspective altogether.
Well, I cannot allow all three to answer that question. There's no time. Only one member.
So Sri Lanka, when we consider Sri Lanka, actually we are a small country. Sometimes we try to export a lot of commodities grown in Sri Lanka, but because of the area restrictions, the land restrictions, we cannot get adequate quantity. So that is the main reason sometimes we fail in our exports. So actually I advise some exporters mostly, you have to select whatever the major crops. Don't try to export everything. Try to pitch some some, what you call that, priority crops. So my one crop I can, early in the morning I think the keynote speaker explained about jack. And also king coconut. So those are actually, we have huge markets there. So we can extend our cultivation. So if we start without extending the cultivation, then you will end up with that problem. Even jackfruits. Now our people are starting export jackfruit, but we don't have proper cultivations in Sri Lanka. So some varieties are not good enough for processing, even for meat substitutions or vegan food. So sometimes it's really difficult to utilize whatever the jack varieties available in Sri Lanka. Therefore now the exporters have started cultivating jack. But we have tell this story, I think 30 years before. So India, actually there was a discussion between India and Sri Lanka. India started cultivating jack, but Sri Lanka didn't consider about that. Now only Sri Lanka realized that that is important. So if the quantity is not enough, definitely we are in trouble. So I think the quality is important, but sometimes quality compromise when there's not enough quantity.
Yeah, we are nowhere, of course, in that case, right? Because every time when quantities are less, quality will go for a 6, definitely. That's how it works. Risvi, I'm sure you are one of the best persons to listen to this, right? We know the work that you started in a private entity with a group of people, capable people. Unfortunately, the scaling up did not take place in the way that we want it to happen. It's a long history, but that's how it is. Manju, you look like you want to say something, but very short, please.
Yeah, very short. But I'm not the authority to answer this or put this particular point. But authority is here, Dr. Mohanty. But if you take...
Which Mohanty? There are two Mohanties.
No. The former director Mohanty. Former director TRI Mohanty. Okay. So if you take the quality-quantity paradigm in tea leaves, we are facing a huge problem. We are in a severe mess here in that case. When we get extremely high amount of green leaf, we get a reduced amount of polyphenols in it. So reduced amount of polyphenols tends us to lesser NSA. So higher quality, lesser quantity, one part is happy. Higher quantity, lesser quality, the other portion is happy. So it has to be a critical balance between quality and quantity in this game, very specially. Now, I really don't want to go into nitty-gritties because you gave me only 1 minute to discuss about it. When the quantity is high, especially with down south or the smallholder tea, their quality is less. When they supply less quality leaf, the factory NSAs are less. So, Professor Marabe, it's a vicious cycle we are in.
Yeah,
so
quite
it's a
right.
never-ending complaint from smallholder to the factory owner, saying that you all don't pay us proper numbers, but you can't pay because they don't earn. For them to earn more, you need quality material to convert into quality output to sell at a higher price. So it is not happening. Somewhere this vicious cycle should break.
Yeah, quite right. Colleagues, I'm getting lots of questions, I must tell you. Director sir, we may pass on some of the questions to the 38th Congress if possible, if you really want to make it happen. Right, the next question, I'm sure this is to, although the panel list has not been identified, I'm sure Ilmi and Manju both together can answer this question. It's about the antibiotic residues. Antibiotic residues. Okay. Hope you got it clearly. Yeah, she's the person who can answer, right? Okay, that's a problem in nowadays, right, for most of the foods that we have. So the question is interesting. That's what I say. Manju, you may also be able to answer. Are there any innovations like chelators? Are there any innovations like chelators that can trap these antibiotic residues from food? So any innovation to that effect, tell me? Or Manju?
Yeah, but not on food. I have personal experience to absorb antibiotic residues to reduce graphene oxide, and it's a product now. So because antibiotic residues comes under emerging contaminants bracket. So when it comes to microplastic, nanoplastic, antibiotic residues and advanced chemical residues are coming under this particular bracket, emerging contaminants. So to reduce or to absorb emerging contaminants, graphene oxide and the reduced graphene oxide is a very, very capable materials, and we have experience. But when food is contaminated with antibiotic residues, my knowledge is not that great for me to understand how you take antibiotic residues from food. If it is on the surface, yes, we can. If it is contaminated water, yes, definitely we can. But once it is within the food system or inside the food, I don't think. Oh no, I can't take that terminology. But that knowledge is not enough to answer that.
Innovations are to come in the future, most likely. So that's the best way to respond to that question. Okay, right. The next question, I'm sure, Director, this question relates to you. You, of course, has a bigger question at the end to end up the whole session. The preamble says economic centers and food supply situation in Sri Lanka are not optimized. That's what the preamble says. And the question is that, is there any modus operandi of optimizing food value chains in Sri Lanka? It says economic centers. We have dedicated economic center, DECs, right? And food supply chains in Sri Lanka are not optimized. That's how it starts, and it gives a lot of other things, but I want to cut it short. So the question is there a modus operandi of optimizing food value chains in Sri Lanka, as you see?
So a very easy question. I think it's something that needs to be studied. I mean, I think the DECs are interesting, and I haven't seen that in too many other countries where they're so sort of formalized. And from what I understand, you know, even though, yeah, people always tell me these stories about vegetables going from like the uplands to Dambulla and back to the uplands and so on. But I think that's something that needs to be studied, because sometimes we think something is not optimal and then you actually study it and it's not as bad as you think. So I haven't seen a paper, a rigorous paper, kind of showing that this is highly dysfunctional. That's my kind of first point. And then there's all these different value chains going on, right? So I think something, I mean, for grad students out there who are listening, studying the supermarkets, very interesting in Sri Lanka. That also gets to the sort of quality, quantity issues. Like we've been engaging quite a lot with Keels, and in some of the fresh areas, the fresh project areas that she was alluding to earlier, we talked with, we visited a Keels collection center, right? So they can, as a farmer, you can sell to someone who's, a trader who's basically coming to your door, more or less, the farm gate. You can make a hike to yourself to some market and sell to some middleman, or you can go to if you're not too far away, go to a dedicated economic center. But the supermarkets are also got their collection centers. And Keels, at least, I don't know about Cargill's, Keels also provides extension services. Now, I talked to a very biased sample of people selling at Keels, and they were saying, oh, I love the Keels extension agents. No offense to the government, but they were saying, like, unlike the government agents, they answer the phone all the time. They come, if I have a pest problem, they come and they try and problem solve. I send them photos and so on as well. And the quality quantity issue, right? If they can produce something of good quality, they can sell it at the supermarket. The rest of the stuff, they sell at some local market. But that's another issue that's not, another sort of value chain that's not really studied, so far as I know, in Sri Lanka yet. And what kind of transformative effect is that having on farmers? I think that's very interesting. But going back to the dedicated economic centers, I mean, that's a great thing to study. Take the Harty price data, do some analysis and see what it says. How inefficient is it really? You've got to keep a bit of an open mind, I think.
Thank you very much for that. Well, the next question, I don't have a medical professional here in this panel to respond to it directly, but let's see how we can address this. It's about the non-communicable diseases. And the question says very clearly in Sri Lanka, non-communicable diseases are increasing at an alarming rate. That's something, blah, blah, blah. There are a lot of other things being written. But the question is, more importantly, what are the steps that can be taken to balance health of a food system? Irmi, would you like to respond to that?
Give some part of the answer. I can give a part of the answer.
Manju, you also can contribute, I'm sure, Derek as well. Here, I will give all three members a chance.
Yeah, I think in Sri Lanka, there are a lot of reasons to increase these non-communicable diseases. One reason is our food habits. So as I told you before, so now we have deviated from our traditional food patterns and we are trying to go for maybe Western food habits, but those food items are sometimes maybe a cause of non-communicable diseases. And the knowledge sharing activities related to this is, I think it's not sufficient. So what are the causes for non-communicable diseases and how your food patterns change to combat with non-communicable diseases? Those things are not properly disseminated, those information. So I can give you one example that the labeling of fruit drinks. So in that actually they wanted to label it low, they wanted to reduce the sugar levels, not reduce the sugar level, the red and green labels. So what the industrialists did was they reduced the sugar level, but they added some sucralose-like things. So we don't know the fate of those things. So we know that sugar, what is the fate of sugar in our body. So there's a pathway for sugar to go. But we don't know how these sugar substitutes the pathway of sugar substitutes. So therefore, that can lead to non-communicable disease. So likewise, there are a lot of things we have to communicate in a proper way, and we have to take steps. So that is one point I wanted to raise.
Thank you very much. Manju, any contribution?
Yeah, it's a very critical question you asked because it created a lot of controversies at one point. So in my scenario, I believe, and we have collected some information and we have done some research, non-communicable diseases, one of the reasons may be reactive oxygen species or radicals. So radicals can be created within a couple of systems. One is stress, not only the food chain, right? Stress is a critical starting point of ROS, reactive oxygen species. So we can't reduce the stress. So we are not we, but most of the other people. So we live with the stress. How to get out of that? If you, again, T. So we know that there are scavengers around us. Proper, potent, and proven ROS scavengers are there. different types of fruits, specialty, green tea, catechins in the green tea. So I really don't know how to answer this question in a broader perspective, but if we are in a position to consume as much as possible proven scavengers, fruits, vegetables, and what we are talking about is the new beverages and new food, let's say food systems in that case, antioxidants, or multispectral antioxidants in that case. So that is one of the ways for us to get out of it. Instead of going behind the causative factors, since we know the causative factors up to a certain level, how to get rid of it or how to fight it is also important. So I don't want to touch one specific non-communicable disease, but when it comes to the spectrum, one of the major starting point is stress, ROS, reactive oxygen species, and radicals. So radical scavenging, having radical scavenging foods, I think it's a precaution in that case.
Yeah, thank you very much, Derek.
Thanks. So as the only foreigner here, I can say two things. One, yeah, you guys eat too much rice, right? So, and also the wrong kind of rice. So I think that's a big issue. A first source of the imbalanced diet, and you see it every day. Lunch here, lunch at IMI where I work. So once you're eating a lot of rice, you're crowding out other things. Then the second thing is, and of course there's cultural reasons, right? So back in the day, Sri Lanka, there's a lot of rice, so even your desserts are made from rice. Traditional desserts are made from rice and so on. So there's a lot of cultural reasons behind that. But when you look at countries that have, there's only a few countries in the world that have kind of got rid of malnutrition and avoided obesity. And actually you alluded to them before. Not China, China's got too much pork, but South Korea and Japan. Right? So South Korea and Japan have kept their traditional diets, but they don't eat high quantities of rice, right? Small portions of rice. And they've done that through their schooling systems, as well as just their cultural belief. But even in school in South Korea, they teach unfashionable home economics, like how to kind of keep diets, and a sort of gymnasium schooling system where they also do a lot of exercise as well, right? Japan and South Korea. So those are kind of two good examples. But the second issue, of course, the big one is the junk food, the processed foods. And this is really quite shocking. So the first work I did in Sri Lanka was with Dr. Dillany, a UNICEF survey, surveying poor mothers in 3 poor districts with children like 12 to 36 months of age. Half of those children were getting unhealthy foods in the previous day. They're toddlers getting unhealthy foods. The mothers also. So that's a huge problem. There's no single solution, and actually there are not really any global success stories for reversing the problem. South Korea and Japan kind of prevented the problem, but reversing the problem is very difficult. But the obvious stuff is, labeling, sugar taxes, fat taxes, but you also need like a kind of somehow to do behavioral change at scale. Starting young, starting with the mothers in the preschools, then the schools, and just keep it up, like pushing it. There's some partial success stories, but it is really incredibly difficult.
Thank you very much. The last question there were a few questions on healthy diets, traditional knowledge, innovative thinking, and so on, which I didn't want to pose to you because you already responded to those questions at different levels. But I would like to pick this up regarding precision agriculture. Manju, to you, being involved with you, engaged with you in these precision agricultural technologies, right? How do you think how that would contribute? This is the last question that I'm going to ask from you. How would that contribute to this food system transformation? At what level, for example?
I think it's everywhere in the entire spectrum, because precision is what you supply for the need and to the need only. Otherwise, we do we cause 2 major problems. One is the waste, other one is the pollution. I'm only talking about fertilizer in this particular, otherwise it's a very broad spectrum and it's no point talking about all these things. But when it comes to inputs and input management, imagine if you apply something unnecessarily, two major problems will come. One, your cost of production, you spend a lot of money to waste it. Number two, by applying all these materials into the environment, the unwanted exposure of this material into the environment. So both problems are equally impactful to this particular subject. If you don't optimize your inputs, your cost of production will go up. Then the affordability to have a proper plate will be in a question mark. That is purely based on the cost of production. Then all the other problems will come behind. So precision agriculture is good for, it is a necessary for a country like us, because we definitely should keep our cost of production and the input use efficiency at the highest place in order to fight this game.
Thank you very much, Manju. Ilmi, the last question for you. I'm picking it up from the questions that I received from the audience also. ITI, I mentioned, is a government-owned business undertaking, right? It works as a private sector in certain cases, but of course it's a government entity. As an entity, what level of contribution that you can make towards this food system transformation?
ITI is a multidisciplinary research and development plus technical service provider. So we can help this food transformation in both angles. So we have R&D capabilities in new food product development, value addition, and also introduce some maybe substitutes for the market. So that is for the R&D activities. So other than that, we have strong technical analytical side, and from that we can identify. So there was a thing like antibiotic residues. Actually, we don't have facilities for that, but we have facilities for pesticide residue analysis. So likewise, we have a lot of capabilities of analytical sides. So then we can analyze whatever the maybe adulterants and all, and then those things we can introduce in the sense that whatever the findings, we can introduce our R&D activities. So sometimes whether we can know whether people are adding more additives, so how to control that, and so likewise we can balance both R&D plus technical services. Other than that, we are highly engaged in reducing post-harvest losses, and what are the activities, what are the things we can introduce to the market to reduce the post-harvest losses of different commodities, and also how to improve our exports through extending storage life, so, and value addition related activities. So these are the major things we can contribute for the food system transformation.
Thanks, Ilmi. Thanks a lot. Derek, the last question of this panel discussion. This time is not to be responded by Derek as a person, but as a person who represents IFPRI, International Food Policy and Research Institute, to see that how IFPRI, as a member of the PGIA system, can support Sri Lanka. Which way you have been supporting Sri Lanka in food system transformations? Very briefly, Derek, over to you.
So we've had two big projects in Sri Lanka the last few years. One is fruits and vegetables for sustaining and healthy diets, which my colleague here is part of as well. And Dr. Delaney has been working on as well as Professor Renuka Silva at Wayamba and many other partners. And that's trying to take an end-to-end approach, really starting with farmers. How can we improve fruit and vegetable production, but also the value chain, storage, marketing, and all the way to the retail level and food environments. So that's one, and those surveys, I guess, should be available online at some stage. And then the second project is one that I co-lead with my colleague Joanna Van Asselt, and we've also worked with Dr. Delaney at Peradeniya, as well as Professor Silver at Wayamba and University of Göttingen, and that's the Bright National Survey. I think I could probably remember what BRIGHT stands for if I tried, but it doesn't matter. So basically, one thing that kind of struck me in Sri Lanka, we talked about the lack of evidence in policy making, and even after the economic crisis, there really were no very good multi-thematic surveys. And it seems like Sri Lanka's never had a really multi-thematic survey. So when you want to measure poverty, you go to the DCS's HAS, right? And when you want to measure nutrition, you've got the DHS. And then there's some other specialized surveys. But for agriculture, for example, if you want to analyze agriculture at a national level in Sri Lanka, what do? Nothing. So we tried to do a survey where we're measuring agriculture, we're measuring livelihoods, we're measuring poverty, expenditure, social protection, women's empowerment, all sorts of different things, because most problems are multi-sectoral problems, and you have to be able to join the dots with good evidence. And then a quick plug, we have a launch next week in Colombo that coincides with his son's wedding, unfortunately. But we have a launch next week, and the data set will be online in December.
All are not invited.
Or not all are invited, very close by. But and so if anybody wants to attend online, they can do that too. And I would also suggest people register on the Bright Project website, as well as a WhatsApp group. We have a big WhatsApp group that Dr. Dilly and I started as well. And we will have a lot of information coming out, and we'd, of course, love to do a training event at Peradeniya as well, if possible. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Derek. Well, colleagues, I think it's high time that we close this panel discussion in the interest of the other programs as well. Outcome. Director sir, I have a request from you. If not for the PGIA, for example, and the Faculty of Agriculture at the University of Peradeniya, let's take all of the faculties into picture. If not for us, who are the people who are going to be pressure groups to support the government of Sri Lanka in terms of providing evidence-based policy, policy recommendations, for example, in order to make decisions? I know PGIA very recently made a very important submission also to the Ministry of Agriculture on this environmental impact quotient, trying to see how best we can select the pesticides with respect to environmental safety aspects. So that's how the PGIA will have to move forward. So here comes lots of important outputs given by thoughts, by opinion leaders in order to make sure such an important policy brief can be developed with your staff, Director sir, to make sure that will be submitted to the government of Sri Lanka. It's high time. Do remember, the budget debate is going on. Anything can happen at any given time until the third reading is done. So let's do not make it a delayed start. Let's try to work cohesively and to make sure all these outcomes of this discussion will be going to the best use. I think that's important, right? Otherwise, we'll be discussing all night sometimes without any fruitful impact coming in. So with that little note, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, we had a very interesting discussion, I'm sure. I had to skip about 2 to 3 questions because of repetitions coming from you. There was one very long comment which I did not read, because we did not have time. So let's all recognize the services rendered by the 3 panelists. The Senior Research Fellow in the Development Strategies and Governance Division at the International Food Policy Research Institute, Derek Harry, and the Director General and CEO of the Industrial Technology Institute, Colombo, Ilmi Heva Jolige, and the Group CEO of the Research and Innovation Arm, LOLC Holdings, Manju Gunawardena. Thank you very much, colleagues. Let's give a big round of applause once again for being with us today. Thanks for taking all your time, valuable time. And I am, as the moderator, Buddhi Marambe, signing off at this particular time. Thank you very much.
Sir, we kindly request you to remain on stage. We thank Professor Buddhi Marabe for moderating the panel discussion and all the panel members for their valuable insights and contribution. We now proceed to present the tokens of appreciation to our esteemed panelists for their valuable contributions to the discussion. I now invite Professor Gamini Pushpakumara, Director PGIA, accompanied by Dr. Rasanjali Samarakon, to present the tokens to our distinguished panelists.
I cordially invite Dr. Durek Hede, Senior Research Fellow, International Food Policy Research Institute. Dr. Ilmi Heva Julige, Director General, CEO, Industrial Technology Institute. Mr. Manju Gunawardana, Group CEO, Research and Innovation, LOLC Holding PLC. And Professor Buddhimarambe, Senior Professor, Department of Crop Science, University of Peradeniya. Thank you all.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have now successfully concluded our panel discussion. While the stage is being set for the next segment of our program, we invite you to relax and enjoy the refreshments served to you. Thank you, and please stay with us as we continue shortly.
Testing, testing, testing. Bargain. Check, check, check. About it. I didn't. Check.
So, we are delighted to have you all with us for the closing ceremony of the 37th Annual Congress of the Postgraduate Institute of Agriculture, University of Peradeniya.
To chair this closing session, I'm honored to cordially invite Dr. Rasanjali Samarakon, Congress Coordinator for the year 2025. Over to you, Madam.
Thank you, Gayan and Samadni. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We have now reached the closing session of the 37th Annual Congress of the Postgraduate Institute of Agriculture. It has been a day filled with insightful presentations, engaging discussions, and inspiring ideas. Let us now begin the proceedings of the closing session. It is now time for a very special segment of our program, addressed by the distinguished alumnus. The Postgraduate Institute of Agriculture has produced many outstanding graduates over the past years, who have gone on to make remarkable contributions in academia, research, policy, and professional practice, both nationally and internationally. Today we are honored to have with us on such eminent alumnus who has continued to bring pride and recognition to the institute through their professional excellence and dedication. To introduce our distinguished alumnus, I now invite Dr. Nipuni Sirimalwatta to read out the citation.
Good evening to you all. So it is my great pleasure to introduce my colleague and the distinguished alumni speaker of the 37th Annual Congress of PGIA 2025, Dr. Tusitha Bandara. He is an award-winning senior executive in Sri Lanka's tea and agri-value chains. At Bogawantalawa Tea Estates PLC, he has led sustainability low country operations and research and development since 2008 and now serves as a director. He is also CEO or director of Lush Agro Private Limited, Chief Sustainability, Quality and Compliance Officer and Director at Bogawantalawa Tea Ceylon Private Limited, and a Director of Green Glow Lanka Private Limited. Recognized for climate leadership, he has driven climate positive and carbon neutral ambitions, expanded 100% renewables, and aligned operations with the EU Green Deal, international certification schemes, and rigorous food safety standards. A sought-after consultant and international speaker, he partners with global brands on climate smart and regenerative agriculture, organic farming, ESG strategy, GHG accounting, renewable energy, and assurance frameworks. His academic foundation blends science and management, PhD in crop science, PGIA, University of Peradeniya in 2023, MBA 2019, MSc in Environmental Forestry, Crop Science, PGIA 2012, and BSc in Agriculture, specializing in crop science in 2008. He is currently pursuing an LLB and a BSc in Artificial Intelligence to further strengthening his expertise and align with global developments. This background underpins his evidence-based, metric-driven approach to leading multidisciplinary programs and supply chain partnerships that build resilient, high-compliance, market-trusted agribusinesses with measurable environmental and social outcomes. And now I warmly welcome Dr. Tusitha Bandara on stage. Thank you.
Director of the Postgraduate Institute of Agriculture, academic staff, distinguished guests, fellow alumni, researchers, and students. Good afternoon to all of you. It's a truly great honor and privilege to be here. As an alumnus of PGIA, Postgraduate Institute of Agriculture, University of Peradeniya. First and foremost, let me extend my heartfelt thanks to the director of PGIA and the organizing committee of 37th Annual Congress for inviting me to speak at this prestigious occasion. When I first received this invitation, I immediately contacted the PGIA and I asked about what is your expectation from my speech, because there should be a very clear understanding for me to speak at this type of occasion. Reply was very clear as usual. I was told, if you can inspire our students by sharing your story, that is our expectation. I believe the most of the audience of this occasion are students. So I have to speak about my story, and this is a bit unusual for me, because if I have to talk about technical matters, maybe about climate change, plantation forestry, sustainability, organic farming, regenerative agriculture, it's not a challenge for me. But speaking about myself, my journey is a bit challenging for me. I'm a person who doesn't have even a Facebook account or any social media platform. So this is my first time I'm speaking about my personal things in a public place. So it's a bit challenging for me. I guess that you can understand about my situation. In fact, this month alone, this is my 5th international level conference, and the month was began at the International Tea Conference in Dubai, followed by many engagement. And last 5 days I was in Malaysia attending International Oil Palm Conference. And I landed today morning, that is why I couldn't attend for the morning sessions. And thanks to Dr. Nipuni, she always reminded me the time, and I came half an hour in advance to the session. So today I do not intend to give you a typical motivational speech. Instead, I want to share my honest reflection, how I grew, how PGIA shaped my thinking, and how that foundation continues to influence every step of my life. So I would like to speak my speech under 4 phases for the better understanding. Phase 1, with the early days at Peradeniya. My journey at Peradeniya began in 2004 when I entered to the Faculty of Agriculture. At that time, Professor Buddhimarambe was the Dean of Faculty of Agriculture. I can still remember his powerful speech at Dorayapa Auditorium during orientation program. That speech planted in our mind the sense of pride and the responsibility of being an agriculture graduate of University of Peradeniya. During my first year, I was served as the badge representative, and life was fully busy and filled with inter-faculty events, inter-university events, leadership responsibilities, countless new experiences, including clashes, fights, arguments, and many more, the new experiences and remarkable milestones. On one more personal note, it was the time I met Achini, one of my batchmates, at that time my university partner, then become my life partner. I majored in crop science and graduated in April 2008. Although I did not face any financial challenges when I was in university, I had a deep interest in finance and entrepreneurship. I had a dream of developing my own capital and start a own business before I leave from university as a graduate. I started giving tuition in physics, and that small initiative grew very rapidly. When I reached my final year, I was managing multiple classes, often starting at 5:30 a.m. during weekend and working until midnight. And during weekdays, I did my classes after 5 p.m. I saved and invested my earning wisely, and even purchasing several plots of land close to city area of Kandy, and I started a real estate business during my undergraduate period. For my final year thesis, I worked at Maskele Plantation under the supervision of Professor Nisanka and Professor Kapila Gunasekara. Upon graduation, I made a firm decision that I will not continue as a tuition master, but I want to step into a corporate world as a transformative leader. With the support and guidance of my professors, especially Professor Nisankar as well as Professor Marambe, I received several job opportunities. I ultimately joined with Bogantala Plantations as a junior assistant manager in June 2008, within 2 months after graduation. Working in plantation was far from easy. It required resilience, teamwork, special attitudes, then the cultural adaptability, strong personality, endurance, and long hours in field, office, as well as in factories. But these early years laid the solid foundation of my professional career. I enjoyed a lot those years. Phase number 2, back to Peradeniya. In 2009, I returned to Peradeniya as a postgraduate student enrolling for the MSc in Environmental Forestry at PGIA. That was not just a continuation of my education, it was the beginning of deeper transformation. Balancing a demanding full-time job with weekend academic sessions was challenging. But the quality of teaching, research exposure, and mentorship I received made every hour worth it. I can still remember field visit, factory tours, intensive discussions with our lecturers, and with their influence extended far beyond the classroom. I inspired by what I learned at PGIA, and I decided not to let theory to remain within the lecture hall. I began practice it to live it. In my states, I applied full spectrum of what I studied: implementation of agroforestry, planting of fuel wood, organic interventions, starting of rainforest, fair trade. At that time, those certificate was not introduced to plantation sector of Sri Lanka. We initiated those new certifications: life cycle assessment, carbon footprint calculation, biodiversity assessment, reporting, and new chapter of plantation sector. And I wanted to transform the plantation into a more sustainable direction. What began as academic learnings soon became a guide in philosophy, a belief that sustainability must practice, not preach. My career accelerated quickly. I was promoted to senior assistant manager in 2010, and then deputy manager in 2011, and plantation manager in 2012. So I was one of the youngest manager in plantation sector at that time. You may have heard, survival in plantation sector is very difficult and challenging, but I did it. I choose to apply the same principles in my personal life and expand my own businesses. I began to invest on agroforestry because that was my subject at the PGIA. I purchased unproductive land, especially from rural areas, at a low cost, and we invested on developing agroforestry, especially the valuable timber species, with the technical guidance and encouragement from academic staff. I'm not going to mention about name because all the academic staff who taught us at that time help us on these initiatives. What started as a personal experiment has now grown into long-term environmental and financial asset, living example of what PGIA instilled in me. That sustainable development begins with personal accountability, nowadays worth millions, and it's a huge asset for me. I completed my MSc in 2012 with a GPA of 3.94, even under huge pressure and the workload at my workplace. In 2013 and 14, I did 2 another degree program in some other universities, and in 2015, I was so addicted for these extracurricular activities as well as this educational journey, although I was spending a very busy schedule in my working place. So I decided in 2015 to continue with my higher education and pursue with PhD at PGIA. My PhD journey at PGIA was one of most defining, humble, and transformative phase of my life. I started my PhD under the guidance and the supervision of Senior Professor Buddhi Marambe, Senior Professor Pushpakumara, Senior Professor Pradeepa Silva, and Dr. Punyavardhana. A team of exceptional mentors who collectively expertise shaped not only my research, but also my character. My topic was characterization and selection of climate resilient farming systems in mountain areas of South Asia. The early stages just were intense. For almost a full year, I did my groundworks. My supervisors insisted that I first master the fundamentals of the research to understand the science before doing the science. I fully agreed with that. That means a deep dive into literature review, methodology, refinement, and the proposal development, and the other related activities. The project was multi-country, spanning Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, as well as in Nepal. I spent months on site visit, pre-survey baseline studies, and preliminary modeling, and other related activities. At times, the workload was overwhelming. But inside, I understood there will be a wisdom for me in future. What I most appreciated was how my supervisors managed to maintain that balance between firmness and compassion. They knew when to push, when to encourage. When I struggled, whether in research, balancing my corporate duties, or in my personal life, they never discouraged me. Instead, they guided, supported, and often quietly motivated me to keep going. I have many personal moments that remain close to my heart, but due to time limitation, I'm not going to touch on those stories. But those are very close to my heart. I was so lucky to have that type of supervisors and expertise to develop my career with PGIA. They didn't just check my work, they shaped my thinking. They taught me to question assumptions, validate models, and defend conclusions with evidence. Over time, our professional relationship evolved into one of the mentorship and trust. That bond, built on respect and diligence, continues even today. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, ma'am, for your all support and the guidance. I began applying once again the knowledge and discipline and the perspective I had gained through my PhD, not only for my professional career, but also my personal growth. The results were remarkable. In 2016, I had a privilege of leading Bogantala plantation to become the world's first climate neutral company, a milestone achievement in the global plantation sector. From that, I continue to strengthen our sustainability journey with great ambition. I initiated first solar trial in upcountry region with a lot of criticisms and the challenges, because a lot of people were questioning and arguing that how these guys are going to do solar development in upcountry area under that type of climatic conditions. I was a bit arrogant, never give up. I faced for these challenges. My supervisors helped me, university helped me, we did trials, we were successful on those trials. I implemented full-scale state-of-the-art solar systems in all my factories, investing 300 million, huge risk. I recovered our investment within 6 years. Not only that, I started implementation of regenerative agricultural practices, protection and enrichment of rainforest, circular economic implementation and manage waste and water, organic interventions, and initiative of establishing South Asia's largest single estate organic herbs and spice zone in Dharanegala, carbon farming, factory and field modernization. Many more other initiatives were started to further strengthen our approach. In 2019, we achieved another global benchmark, that was world first climate positive certification. followed by 100% renewable energy certification. And we registered at UNGC and we came into a membership with UNGC in 2019 on the same year. In 2021, climate activator certification and gold standard certification, first time in world for a tea company. This accomplishment earned Bogwantala multiple national and international recognitions, positioning the company, Sri Lanka's tea industry, as a global benchmark for sustainability. Just last year, Bogwantala received the Best Sustainability Award for our climate positive journey at the North American Tea Convention, competing against all major tea producing nations, reconfirming the leadership on global stage. During COVID-19 lockdown, together my wife, we choose to see opportunities amidst uncertainty. We began investing strategically in areas aligned with our shared passion, agriculture, science, and innovation. What started as a small research experiment during lockdown gradually evolved into smooth and much bigger. Today, we proudly operate two successful owned companies, all rooted in the same principles of research-driven innovation, scientific integrity, and sustainable growth, and those valued deeply instilled in me through my time at PGIA. Finally, after 6 years of determination, I successfully my defendant by PhD. That day was not just an academic milestone, it was a tribute to my mentors, my family, my organization, and to PGIA, which had stood by me every step of the way. Phase number 4, post-PhD period. During my PhD journey, and especially after completing of my PhD, my career at Bogwantala, as well as Metrocorp and Metropolitan, our groups, advanced rapidly. I was entrusted with the greater responsibilities, promoted to general manager, then director, later appointed as CEO of sister companies, chief sustainability officer, and the board director position in many subsidiaries. Now, I'm satisfied and I believe that I have successfully achieved my target set up in April 2008. Finally, to the student here today, allow me to share a few lessons from my journey. Number 1, challenges make you stronger. A seed becomes to a tree, breaking its own shell. Embrace the challenges. There is no gain without pain. Number 2, build relationship with your academic staff, supervisors, and peers. People you meet here will shape your future. Some of my greatest lessons, business ideas, came from informal discussions after lectures, maybe after field visits, maybe after conference like this. Translate knowledge into action. Don't let what you learn remain on papers or lecture hall. It's a crime. Use it to create value in your professional and personal life. Number 4, respect the process. I think it's very useful for youngest. Success doesn't come or doesn't happen overnight. Many newcomers, maybe to PGIA or any other organization, you may have many experiences, expect quick results. But growth is built through years of commitment. Number 5, I believe it may not be applicable for majority of you, but it was applicable for me. I would like to highlight that. I told you not to discuss about that, but I want to highlight that point as well. Leave your ego outside the Galah Junction. When I started my PhD at PGIA, I was served as the Deputy General Manager of Bogwantala, but to PGIA, I was just a research assistant or a student. That humility allowed me to learn deeply. Number 6, value the academic and non-academic staff. In my view, PGIA has the most dedicated, qualified, professional, academic and non-academic team in the country. Number 7, that's the last but not the least, recognize your resources. PGIA offers exceptional infrastructure resources. Make the maximum use of them. And on top of all the 7 points I discussed previously, learn and train to never give up. Even the hardest path can lead to extraordinary destinations if you walk with discipline, purpose, and the heart. Finally, I want to say PGIA is more than an institution. For many of us, it is our second home. This place built who I am today. I will always be proud to be a PGIA alumnus. My story is just among many. I'm repeating it. My story is just one among many. But it is living proof of how this institute shapes life when passion meets the opportunity. Thank you once again for this honor. I wish every student the very best on your journey ahead. May you take the name of PGIA to even a greater heights. Thank you.
So please be remain on the stage, sir. Okay. Now I invite Professor Gamini Pushpakumara, Director, PGIA, to kindly present a token of appreciation to Dr. Tusita Bandar. Thank you, dear sirs. And thank you, Dr. Rasanjali Samarkon, for chairing the session.
We now come to a highlight of today's program, the 3-minute thesis, a showcase of academic brilliance where our postgraduate students will distill their research into a powerful 3-minute presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, we warmly invite you to witness their talent and intellect. To lead the 3-minute thesis final competition, I cordially invite Dr. Sumali Disanayaka to take over the session. Over to you, madam.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. A warm welcome to you all gathered here today for the grand finale of the first ever 3 minutes competition held as part of the 37th Annual Congress of the Postgraduate Institute of Agriculture, University of Peradeniya. The 3 minutes thesis competition, originally introduced by the University of Queensland, Australia, is internationally recognized as a non-technical research communication competition. Its primary aim is to challenge students to present their research clearly, concisely, and engagingly to a non-technical audience within just 3 minutes. Although the Faculty of Agriculture, University of Peradeniya, has conducted 3 minutes thesis competition since 2017 for its undergraduate research competition. This is the first time that 3MT is introduced to the PGIA Annual Congress. So we are proud to bring this global platform to our postgraduate students to advance research communication beyond disciplinary boundaries. So this year, the competition was open to all postgraduate students, both local and international. An awareness session was held on 3rd November 2025, followed by the first round on 18th November, where 30 contestants took up the challenge of communicating their research to a general audience within just 3 minutes. From them, the 3 best presenters were selected for today's grand finale. So we sincerely thank the first round judging panel for their expertise and support in shaping this initiative. So today we are honored to have a distinguished judging panel. with deep experience in evaluating non-technical audience-focused 3MT competitions. Professor Samidhi Navaratna, Department of Community Medicine, Faculty of Medicine, University of Peradeniya. Professor Chaminda Bandara, Department of Civil Engineering, Faculty of Engineering, University of Peradeniya, and Dr. Udyan Ranatunga, Senior Lecturer, Department of Chemistry, Faculty of Science, University of Peradeniya. Thank you very much for joining us today. So we are also introducing the People's Choice Award for the very first time. You, as the audience, have the opportunity to act as a non-technical evaluator today. A QR code is placed in front of your seat, and your voting will begin once the presentation starts. The voting window will remain only 10 minutes after the final presentation, so please cast your vote promptly. Wi-Fi credentials are provided for your convenience. A brief reminder about the competition rules. Only one static PowerPoint slide is allowed. No props or additional media. Presentations must be spoken word only. The time limit is 3 minutes, and exceeding it results immediate disqualification. The presentation begins with the first word or movement. The judge's decision is final. Judging will focus on two main aspects: under comprehension and context, clarity, logical flow, non-technical language, and effective time use. And under engagement and communication, we look at the stage presence, audience connection, enthusiasm, and effective use of the slide. So please keep these criteria in mind when you vote for the People's Choice Award. So at this point, I warmly congratulate all three finalists selected from among 30 participants. Reaching today's stage demonstrates your exceptional ability to communicate complex research to a non-technical audience, which is the true essence of the 3MT competition. So ladies and gentlemen, let us begin our grand finale. Our first presenter is Ms. KGNS Pereira, a Master of Philosophy candidate at the Postgraduate Institute of Agriculture, University of Peradeniya. She's currently working as a research assistant at the Veterinary Research Institute and Farm Chemie Private Limited. Her 3MT presentation is titled Rewrite the War Plan. Please join me warmly inviting Ms. Pereira to the stage.
Just imagine if the army revealed their war plan to the enemy. What would happen? Yes, it would be a serious threat to the national security. Now, shift that battlefield to the microscopic world. When we feed antibiotics to healthy chicken, not to treat diseases, but to make them grow faster, we are teaching harmful bacteria how antibiotics work. The outcome is infections that do not respond to antibiotics. That's why we must reduce unnecessary use of antibiotics in farming. So, can we raise broiler chickens without using antibiotics as growth promoters? Yes, that's the question my research tries to answer. I evaluated 4 essential oils from cinnamon, clove, cardamom, and cashew nut shell oils for their growth promoting effect on broiler chickens. To do this, we conducted 2 feeding trials, each with 480 broiler chickens. They were assigned into several groups. Some groups were fed basal feed supplemented with cinnamon, clove, cardamom, or cashew nut shell oil individually at low, moderate, high doses. To observe the real impact, we established 2 control groups as well. One was fed with antibiotic growth promoters and the other had no growth promoters at all. Throughout the growing period, we evaluated feed intake, weight gain, feed conversion efficiency, and many other parameters separately for each group. Finally, after analyzing the collected data, we compared essential oil supplemented groups with 2 control groups. Surprisingly, the lowest tested level of cinnamon, clove, cardamom, and the moderate level of cashew nut shell oil was improved weight gain and feed conversion efficiency of broilers, outperforming the birds fed without any growth promoters. Because these essential oils can reduce harmful bacteria and improve digestion to help broilers grow well. However, I need to mention that these essential oils at the tested doses couldn't surpass the growth performance of broilers fed with antibiotic growth promoters, because sometimes one soldier can't win the